So I'll go ahead and start with just welcoming you to our first Inspire Me seminar for the spring 2017. So thanks for coming. We do have a sign-up sheet. If you haven't already signed up, make sure you sign up on it's back there on the table now. And I guess we're normally running around, but we'll just leave it back there. So on the way out, make sure you get that done. All right. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. We're here to talk about so after graduation, I'm guessing, at least speaking to the students, after graduation, you're probably going to be interested in starting an engineering career, maybe. And so the next thing we want to do is to try to understand, how do you transition from school into that working environment, or what I know our president calls the bridge to career. And so a little bit that's what we're here to talk about today. So we have a nice panel of industry professionals here that will be able to help answer your questions and talk about the different things that might be important to you as you do that. So I'm going to, basically discuss, we're going to talk traits and skills, like what are some good skills that you can have and develop that would be helpful for you to become successful in your career. How do you do a job search? Those types of things. And also, how do you be successful once you get there? What are things that you need to do within the professional environment? Those types of questions. So, anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and introduce the panel. And you guys are a little out of order, so I'll see if I can make this work. So our first, to my left, my left, I'll say. So Sarah Haight, and she's the engineering manager at Rekluse Motorsports. And next is Bart Heinz. He's the director of engineering and motive power. And then we have Tony Clark, who's the area lead for mechanical engineering and power engineers. I don't know if that's what I have here. Okay. And then next is Marty Lindgren, who's global facilities and technologies team manager at Micron Technologies. And on the end we have Dustin, Lilya, department manager, engineering services and refrigeration at DC Engineering. So let's welcome them to our show. Thanks for being here, guys. So now we have them all introduced. Basically, I want to offer the opportunity. Any questions that you have, along the way, please raise your hand. This is going to be an interactive type of forum and that sort of thing. But I do also want to introduce the audience to our panelists. So I like to use the applaud or boo method. Okay. So I'm going to ask you a question, and you can applaud or boo depending on what your answer is. So this is maybe. So how many of you are getting ready to graduate? Back there, right? You've already graduated. Yes. Who's graduating or getting ready to graduate? All right. So who's interested in finding an exciting engineering job? Our faculty searches.
You asked me.
I know. So who thinks they're ready to take responsibility for a $5 billion engineering project right now? Right. Who thinks their skills are huge and they don't need to learn anything new? Was that for the huge or for the huge? All right, so who in the room would always like to be able to call Professor Joe Garrido when they get stuck on a problem? Did I hear a boo?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so that's our audience. So, all right. So with that, I was going to basically go down the line a little bit here, and I'd like for each of the panelists to kind of tell us a little bit about what you do at your what your company is about, and kind of what your role is. So Sarah, would you like to go ahead and start?
Yeah. So first of all, thanks for coming, guys. I know it's lunch hour, so I saw those cookies, which is spot on. Like John said, my name is Sarah Haight. I'm actually the engineering manager at Rekluse Motorsports. And what we do there is we make aftermarket clutches for motorcycles. So we have dirt. We cover mostly the dirt market, but we also have some street brands also. So we are an engineering company. We make all of our own stuff on site. So we do all of our production, assembly, shipping, everything, marketing, everything's on site. So my past job actually for the last 3 years has been operations manager. And then I just took over engineering within the last few months. So I'm kind of still in the transition, but operations manager, what I did there was I managed production, shipping, assembly, and also friction bonding. So we make our own clutch plates. And then on the engineering side, I'll be managing operations engineering, R&D engineering, and then kind of more of a research type role.
Very good. Thank you. Very good. Bart?
So my name is Bart Heinz. Little background. So I went to Kansas State University in mechanical engineering. So that's my background. I started out from school and was in aerospace the whole time. In Wichita, Kansas, there's a lot. Cessna, Beechcraft, Learjet were all founded there. So there's a lot of jobs there. Now I work for Motive Power, which is out on Federal Way. They design and manufacture locomotives, both for the freight and commuter markets. And we also do a lot of rebuilds and remanufacture. So that's overhauling your engine and doing upgrades to emission standards or whatever they would like. So I'm the director of engineering there, and we have I think I roughly have about 60 people on the engineering team right now. I'm also in charge of customer support, so issues that happen in the field, so all the warranty and customer issues we have on the back end, we have that responsibility. So from an engineering standpoint, you do the design and the analysis, and you follow the build through it, and then somebody also has to fix all the stuff that comes up on warranty or different things in the field or upgrades. So responsible for all that. I moved out here the beginning of last year, so I've been out here for about a year. And like we were saying up here, everybody said it snows once or twice a year, a couple inches, and it melts off the next day. Everybody's lied to me so far.
My name is Tony Clark. I work at the Power Engineers. We're an engineering consulting firm in the power industry. A big part of our work is transmission and power distribution. I'm in the generation division that designs power plants. Our division was about 150 people 3 years ago, and we acquired Burns & Rowe Engineers, which was a much larger generation design firm over on the East Coast. So I'm the area lead for our Idaho offices, Boise and Haley, and then our department manager sits back in New Jersey, and he runs the big picture stuff, and I get to manage the personnel day-to-day HR kinds of things in addition to leading projects, writing proposals, visiting clients, field support, all that stuff. So we're in several industries, mostly gas turbines and geothermal, but there's also biomass, coal conversion, solar. I said geothermal. Geothermal is really big for us.
You said twice.
It's that big. And I went to a university in Missouri, Rolla. Now it's called the Missouri University of Science and Technology. It used to be School of Mines, but that's my background.
Very Marty.
Marty Mendren, originally from northern Minnesota, so this kind of weather was typical in October. So I went to school in UC Santa Barbara for my undergraduate degree. That's why I went to UC Santa Barbara, because we had this kind of weather in October. I'm actually a chemical engineer, but I work for Micron, and for a large company, global, of course, about 36,000 employees. And my role within the company is I'm our corporate facilities engineering manager. So I don't work for Boise. I don't work for any particular site. I work for the corporate team that so work for everyone. And my team, we have multi-disciplines in our team, chemical, mechanical, all types of engineers. And our team basically is the first on the ground when we're going to design and build a new facility. We just built an $800 million facility in Singapore that our team was the first to jump in, work with an AE firm to make sure that the design and the specs are correct. For example, we want to have a system that has a certain capacity associated with it and a certain design to that. system, whether it be open-closed system kind of thing, our team will make that determination. The AE firm will actually do the detailed design, but our team is the first on the ground. We also determine the standards within Micron on a facility. So we like to be a green company, so we make sure that we are meeting the energy conservation type standards so that we can get all the green awards or the LEED awards associated with that. My personal background is in anything to do with water, and which is interesting because whether it be chilled water, ultra-pure water, whatever, you think, oh, that falls in the chemical engineering world. Everybody I work with around the world is actually a mechanical engineer, which is I found was rather interesting. So although maybe I'm apologizing for being a chemical engineer, but most of my work is actually mechanical related. And I've been at Micron for well over 20 years. That's why I look so old and aged, I guess.
Thanks, Bart. All right, Dustin?
I'm Dustin Lilya at DC Engineering. To avoid any booze, I won't tell you where I graduated from, but you can probably guess. And I went to school in Idaho, so.
Process of elimination.
Yeah. So anyway, thanks for inviting me. My role at DC Engineering is Department Manager for Energy Services and Refrigeration Design. DC Engineering is a true just engineering consulting firm, so we have multiple sectors that we work in, mainly commercial, industrial, and retail. And so most of our clients, we design mechanical, electrical, plumbing, structural design, and refrigeration, energy services. Basically everything shy of architecture. We're about 150 folks. We have offices in Boise, Missoula, Montana, and Dallas, Texas. We do projects nationwide. We're licensed in all 50 states, and a few in Canada. My role with the company is really to drive energy services. It's a little unique niche of engineering where we help clients with energy retrofits for upgrading existing facilities with new technologies, lighting, higher efficiency HVAC, a lot of projects related to utility incentives. We also, on the other side of my job, do a lot of refrigeration design for most of the major retail chains like Whole Foods, Whitco, Walmart, several others. As a company, we do a wide range of projects, anything from, we did recently the Cliff Bar manufacturing process line in Twin Falls. We didn't do the process part, but the facility part, design of that. We do most of our projects out of the state of Idaho, which is kind of interesting, but we've worked with a lot of these folks at Micron and others in town as well as so I have a team of about 15 folks help execute the projects.
Thanks, Dustin. All right, so I'm gonna ask a few questions. I'll probably skip around a little bit and ask different people questions. If you have something you really want to say about it, feel free to jump in. And please, audience, this is an opportunity to interact and discuss. So raise your hand. We'll get you into the conversation. So I'm going to start back with Dustin. I'm going to go back with you a little bit and put you on the spot.
Perfect.
Yeah, awesome. So can just describe about maybe three main traits that you look for whenever you're thinking about a good employee or whenever you're thinking about hiring a good employee.
Yeah, right. I think an individual's attitude when they come to work is probably one of the key factors for me. Is the school aspect for a new hire, for a new graduate. I guess we're talking in that perspective.
Okay.
Some limited experience. There's a wide gap between practical knowledge of what the construction industry and the trade industries do versus what you might learn in school, and so there's a big gap there in learning of industry jargon and what's a VAV box and all of this terminology that it's not that complex, but when you transition from a highly technical, analytical aspect of school into the real world where you need to be able to design an entire building's HVAC system, communicate that to a contractor that then has to build it, there's a pretty big learning curve there. So I think having that right mindset and attitude when you come into that position, that I'm very smart, very educated, but there's a big gap in my knowledge, and taking that role and understanding that that's what you need to do, and taking that extra initiative to learn those things and ask the right questions or are critical. And the other part of it is, I think communication skills are absolutely critical as far as being able to talk to clients, being able to present your ideas and information to clients is very critical. And so having well-polished resumes, being able to speak well in front of people and answer questions and so forth, and also know where your limitations are and not ramble on about things that you're not really that familiar with and so forth. Kind of knowing your limitations and asking questions where you can, kind of having that humble approach, I think is very attractive and helps us when we hire those new folks to be able to train and help bridge that gap for the learning curve. But it's important to understand that coming in, that you're not going to be able to design a 5-story building's HVAC system for day 1. Day 10, you're going to have to do that when you come work for us. So you got 10 days. So there's a we're pretty hardcore. No, there's a learning curve, and we understand that as an employer, but we need to see that attitude of willingness to realize that you don't know everything, that you're willing to learn and ask the right questions and participate and be part of the team is really important to us as well. So we look forward. Okay.
Thanks, Dustin.
Yeah.
We'll kind of come back this way a little bit, and Marty, I'll let you answer, and then we can ask anybody else to jump in a little bit after that. So, Marty, do you have a comment on that?
I mean, he could have spoke everything for me. One thing that I do a lot of K-12 stuff when tours and such at my prom, that the young people want to be engineers. And I always ask the question, what's the most important class you take in high school and college? And, if you want to be an engineer. And everybody says math or science or chemistry or whatever. And I say, no. The most important class you take is an English class or a speech class. I don't care how smart you are. If you can't communicate that knowledge to somebody else or to a piece of paper, you're useless. Okay, so that communication piece is extremely important. And as Dustin said, the right attitude, the willingness to learn, I think is extremely important. One thing that I look for in an interview situation is I will softball toss the question, tell me what you're passionate about. And I better see your eyes light up, otherwise I don't care about you. Because if you can't be passionate about anything, you're not going to be passionate about my job. Right? I want to see some passion in a person before I would hire them. And it could be about your cats. I mean, I don't care, but I like to see some passion. And kind of to Dustin's point, also on the technical side, you have a degree. I trust that Boise State or wherever you went to school is going to educate you, and you're going to understand thermodynamics or whatever. I trust that. And so, but the piece of that I would like to see is how you participate as a team. You mentioned teamwork and collaboration. In an interview setting, or I want to see on a resume that, hey, I was part of a team on a project and I contributed by doing what? So I think that demonstrates the collaboration piece of anyone working with a team. It's not I, it's we. So that's the kind of things that I think are important to myself when I look at anybody.
Thank you. Thanks, Mark. Questions? Anybody? We're going through? All right, I'm looking for hands. Oh, yeah, I got one.
So how do we make it clear on our resume when we're coming out of college that we have demonstrated teamwork and maybe some of those communication skills? How do you do that quickly and efficiently?
Don't have spelling errors on your resume and your cover letter.
If you have a typo, it's immediate. It's like you're trying to get a job as a professional, and the first thing you see is that you misspelled the word "the." That's a problem. It is. It's a problem. Spelling, grammar, everything is important.
I think this question will probably come up later, but I think what you guys always want to think about, getting a job, that's just solving a problem, right? So think about the process. What happens? 100 kids graduating from school apply for the same job. So what differentiates them? So what is the process? The process is you guys apply for a job, HR gets the resumes, they screen them for who meets the requirements and who doesn't. So if we want a mechanical engineer and you're a business major, so then that 100 gets down to 20. That 20 gets sent out to the hiring manager or whoever that is, and it literally, that's probably the best question that if you're looking for a job that you can answer here is, what is that next step? I get a stack of resumes. It literally, I tell HR, give me all 100 because it'll take me 5 minutes to walk through them. I look at the resume. I've had people from Boeing give me a 14-page resume and everything. I look at the first thing and I pretty much toss it aside. If you can't say succinctly what you can do in 1 page or 2 pages, you probably don't have it. So then for you guys, the biggest thing on your resume that you can do is differentiate yourself. How do you do that when you don't have a job experience to go from? So it goes through, everybody always puts all their coursework on it. There's some of them that have all classes you've ever taken that's here. Everybody's doing that. You've already said it. You've all got that. So that doesn't. If you don't have anything else on your resume, definitely do that in big font so it fills up your page. So then you look at the coursework. You're graduating. That tells us as a hiring manager that you're able to accomplish things and solve problems. So you're all going to be in that same boat. Then the next thing is, what did you do when you're not? I remember one specifically. The only thing other on his resume than the coursework was he was a lifeguard. Well, at least he did something when he was in high school that he had a job. Then you go through the whole thing, and I wrote it down. Working through college. If you've got a job in college, or even if you're refereeing for the rec league, whatever that is, you're doing something above and beyond. If you know certain softwares, it's critical. If you're good with the Microsoft Office suite, if you know a CAD program, if you've done any schematic stuff, that's huge because if you can learn those tools, that's a big thing. So coursework, everybody takes thermal. Everybody takes statics. Everybody takes dynamics. What differentiates you from something? So always think of that. Then you go, if you work on engineering projects, and what role did you take in it? Because one of the big things that you look for, we've all worked on projects with 4 or 5 people, and there's always that one person that's just like either didn't pull their weight or was never wrong, you didn't want to work with them. As a hiring manager, that's what you're trying to glean from that resume and the interview process. Can I work with this person? Teamwork, because things are going to go wrong. You're going to get yelled at. They might talk about your mom at some point. Things happen. You're on a $5 million project that's a month late. It gets intense, so you've got to be able to work with people. So that doesn't come through on a resume. On a resume, you need to be able to succinctly say what your story is. And then the final thing is if you have experience in a job that relates, that's huge. And I'll give you the 4 examples. From the Midwest, Iowa State, great universities, great engineering school. Every single student graduated from engineering had to have a co-op. Not an intern, a co-op. So they had to take a semester off and go out and have a job. I went to K-State. We weren't required to do that. We went to aerospace or we went down and we worked in the petroleum industry down in Oklahoma or Texas. They were just needing bodies. They hired people. When you were at a place where I worked one time where we were interviewing people from Iowa State and Kansas State, every one of the Iowa State students already had experience where they spent 6 months at a company and added value. It's hugely critical. So you think about that. If you don't have that, then what engineering projects you work for? Did you work through school? All these things, look at it. And the one thing everybody has is your GPA. You look at that, but that doesn't eliminate the vast majority. Because if you look at somebody that has a 3.0 that worked through college, or somebody that had a 3.8 that didn't work, we have to solve problems every day and work hard. So all these things have weighted factors on it. So to differentiate yourself, I would say the most stuff that makes you different, not the coursework, it's the things that you practically applied in your skill set that will jump off on the paper. And literally, you look at it like this and you go, I look to see GPA, where you went to college, basically what your discipline is. I don't look at the relevant coursework, I skip that whole part. I look at your jobs, and then I say, okay, I take those and say, I'll take a look at that one more later. And I go through it literally in 5 minutes. I'll go through a big stack and I'll end up with 6 or 8 resumes. And it's that quick. Because I don't have time to sit down and evaluate all your resumes. I'm not going to read 14 pages of stuff to figure out if I want to talk to you again. If you can't write in 2 pages what you want to get across to me, I don't have an hour and a half to go through that. So that's a great question, but it's really, how do you differentiate yourself?
Very good. Tony, Sarah, do you want to add anything to that?
That was great.
I think talk about skills and
extracurricular activities.
Yeah.
Definitely list those, and that's a good way to find out what you're passionate about. If you like hang gliding or monster trucks or drag racing or whatever, a lot of those,
monster trucks.
Yeah, why not? Monster trucks, yeah.
Sure, you have a work-life balance.
Right, and a lot of those are skills that you can apply towards your job too. If you like to tinker on things. Most engineers do. If all you'd like to do is sit at a computer and do simulations and models, there are good jobs for that too. Those are good skills. But tailor it to the job that you're trying to interview at the time, and don't just have one resume that you send out to everybody.
Right.
Customize it for that job that you're applying for.
One point to add to that.
Yeah.
When you say what your goal is or what you're trying to accomplish, but don't say just try to find a job anywhere that might hire me. You're trying to get a job at my company. Do some research, find out what we do, and tell me where you're going to find a niche to contribute. I don't care that you're looking for a job. I care what you can do for me. Not to be harsh, but I don't care if you want to go work at Boeing or somewhere else or do something else. I got a refrigeration engineering job. Don't tell me you want to design HVAC as your goal. So that matters. That's the first thing that I read is why do you want to work here and what would you be able to contribute to the position that's been posted. Yeah, it's important. Good stuff.
Question?
If we base our resume around a template instead of just creating it from scratch, is this okay? Does it matter? Do you notice that at all? Or?
So the question is, should you start with a template on your resume, or maybe try to create it from scratch? Is that kind of what you're saying? Well, okay, so maybe that question, but then maybe also, did you see any that really stood out to you? Is there like a memorable one that you remember?
Yeah, I think starting with a template isn't a bad thing, but again, just like Bart said, you want to differentiate yourself. So if your resume looks like 10 other people's resumes exactly, you just blend in, right? So maybe if you were the first on with like the top guy, and that you're the first one that is on the list, and everybody else looks like you might pass through that. But as an engineer, we essentially we're going to hire you to think and to problem solve, and so making your resume something that's yours, and not necessarily creative, but something that stands out is important. So you can start with a template, and for your first resume, quite frankly, just getting it put together is a challenge, right? I don't know if you guys have tried that, but just getting the first one together is like it's a route for the team. So that's fine, but I would definitely make sure you customize it and make it look like yours.
I think exactly what she said. You start with the template, that way you know you're not missing anything. And then what I can remember when I was in college, they had them, and then I looked at some of the ones that stuck their little resumes in, and I looked at the ones and I said, this is the one, if I'm looking, we'll cut, the first thing I did is I had a big label on the top of it. Eventually you'll figure out that you don't need that. It's just, you need the pertinent information on there, because what happens a lot of time when you apply, you actually have to cut and paste your resume into a text format that's a rich format that doesn't allow any of the stuff. The information is what's key. If you're going to work for somebody that wants to have in engineering, if you work for somebody that wants to have some fancy design on there, you probably, you might or might not like working for that person to begin with. It's really about the information. So exactly, start with the template, that way you know you're not missing anything, but then look at several different things and say, this one, I like that one the best, and model yours after that one. You don't have to invent anything. We'll all tell you that if you start from scratch on anything, it'll cost way more money and you'll never hit budget or start from a known good and work your way up.
True.
Never reinvent.
I got one piece of advice one time. I can't remember where, but it was related to resumes, and they said, take your resume, write it, and hand it to somebody that doesn't know anything about you, and ask them to identify the first 3 things that came to their eye, and then have them flag those first 3 things that popped out visually to them, and look back at it then and say, are those the first 3 things I want somebody to know about me? And that's back to the differentiation point. When we look at a resume, that's what go by is visual. If something pops out to me, I'm going to read that. If it doesn't pop out to me, I'm not going to read it. So try to get somebody, a third party or somebody, to look at it and say, what are the first 3 or 4 things that you notice? And that's probably what's going to be read by whoever's reviewing it. And is that what you want? And that's a good way to probably look at it. Is your resume in a good format? Beyond that, I don't know that there's any particular one that's better or worse. But
I'll say, so we're all engineers, we're all data-driven, right? And, most of us don't speak in story. So your resume and story is not good.
Yeah.
It needs to be succinct, short bullet points. Because if I'm scanning through it, I don't want to have to, like the 14-page example, you can do that on 1 page. I've gotten resumes before that are like blocks of text. I'm never going to read that.
No.
I'm like, nope, that's done. Like, so, make sure that you're make it easy for us to read it, and we'll read it. If you make it hard for us, then we're not going to do it.
So before you go, the question that was asked earlier, what makes your resume stand out? I think you've heard probably 4 or 5 different things from this panel. Nothing makes your resume stand out, but there's a whole bunch of things that will eliminate your resume. So think of it the other direction. Solve the problem because misspelled words, writing a story, 14 pages, these are all things that will get you eliminated. And I promise you it happens. And I don't remember any of the good resumes, but I remember the ones, and I remember the interviews, like, I cannot believe that person said my name. I don't remember.
So it's like what not to do.
So yeah, there's an elimination process. All you can do is eliminate yourself.
I have a question up here.
Yeah, along with the blocks of text, how do you guys feel about cover letters? Should it follow that bullet point, format that you're talking about, or should it be more paragraph style?
Can I start that? So I think the important thing about a cover letter is that if it's generic, if you put a cover letter on your resume and it's generic, I don't even read your resume. I just throw the whole thing away. So, I will post a job for what I'm looking for, and it's very probable that you don't meet all the qualifications of that job, right? We're not all perfect. We don't have exactly the skill sets that people are looking for, right? And so what I'm looking for in a cover letter is, how are you going to add value to my company, and what types of things are, do you match, and what types of things don't you match, and how are you going to get there? So, because when I look at your resume, I'm going to know right off the bat if it says you have SolidWorks experience. It doesn't say SolidWorks in there. I'm going to go, okay, well, did they miss that, or did they not have experience, or I don't know, right? I'm left to guess. And so, like, listing it on your cover letter and saying, these are the skills I have, these are the things I don't have, but these are the things that I would do to get there. That's what typically I look for in a cover letter. It's not necessarily what everybody writes on there, but it's definitely not like, the generic, you pulled it from a template from some God knows website. Like, you're wasting your time, you're wasting my time.
So the resume in narrative form would be, just reiterating it in narrative form would be a bad idea.
Yes, not a good idea.
But really, what in the cover letter, and it was said earlier, in your objective on your resume, generic is not what you want. You want somebody, if you're going to write a cover letter, do some research and say, hey, I know I'm not a direct fit for this, but I don't have SolidWorks, but I did Solid Edge, and I know I could do that, so then it doesn't fit the bill, but that's the things that you want to put in the cover letter. A generic cover letter, it actually subtracts from what you did. So here's somebody that didn't do any research on my company. They don't know anything about it. They just sent this out with 100 other resumes that, so you need to actually, if you have passion about a job and you want to do it, just say, hey, I love the area. I want to work there. I've known this company since I was 10 years old. This is my, that's the kind of stuff that will make a cover letter help you out. If you just put a generic one, it doesn't help. I won't say that it gets thrown away, but it does not help at all.
Of course, a better man than I am.
I throw them away. I just didn't want to say it out loud.
Right. Any rest of you want to?
I think they hit it spot on. The cover letter is an opportunity to show that you understand the job.
Yeah.
Okay. The resume is about you, a little more about you, but you want to, in a cover letter, you want to show you understand the job. And in our company, we are slightly different in that we get thousands of resumes going through human resources. That cover letter is actually more for human resources to make sure that you're applying for the right job, and then, quite frankly, they tear it off and they throw it away. But it's important that lets somebody know that you understand the job. And with that being said, if you're applying for a job and you're not sure about it, pick up the phone, call somebody at the company, whether it be Micron or Motor Forces. Hey, can you tell me a little bit more about the job, so that way you know what to put in that cover letter. You can target it. Don't just shotgun it. Go do some research so that cover letter looks like you care, that you've gone out and understand the job, understand the needs. It makes a world of difference. It differentiates you if you understand what's going on with that job.
Good question.
Yeah, good question.
So back to you guys. When you go on an interview, do you write a thank you letter? And I'll just say this. Thank you letters aren't that big of a deal, but if it's a 50-50, if you have said something in the interview or you didn't say something in an interview that you want to clarify, that's a great opportunity to do that. And a lot of times in the interview process, it's a week or 2 weeks long. So there's opportunity if you write the thank you note the next day. And it doesn't make one bit of difference, because 9 out of 10 times there's not going to be I mean, it'll be pretty clear the people you want to bring back in for a second interview or to put an offer to. I would say a thank you letter is more important than a cover letter unless you've done your research. Because, a thank you letter is not a requirement, but that gives you an opportunity to clarify something you said, to add something that you didn't say.
One more question. Yeah.
For those thank you letters you just brought up, would that be rather paper letter or email or something like that?
When you get a thank you letter, do you care if it's handwritten or, I mean, how do you like to receive that? A handwritten note? Because personally, if I see one that's typed in, I'm guessing that they did the same thing on the cover letter and they just typed the first thing and they send the same one to everybody. You handwrite one, I'm going to take the time to read it. If you send me a form one, if I have time, I might read it. So if you want, I would handwrite it and send it out. But I mean, it's your call. Because I know how I would do it. If I had to write 100 thank you letters, I would make a template and I would change the name and the first paragraph and then sign it and send it out. But that's not going to get what you want.
And then you're sending a different message.
Right.
One thing I would like to just say too, related to resumes, is don't rely on submitting resumes as your only option for looking for jobs. Because for me, for when we hire people, having to post a job and look for resumes off the street is like our last resort. We always try to find people we already know, they're a known quantity, they're people we've worked with in the industry, and so forth. And so if you spend all 100% of your time just trying to send resumes to all of these postings, in a lot of cases, that's the last resort type of thing that people are looking for just a body to fill a role, versus spending some time and getting involved in industry, ASHRAE, other areas. You're going to meet people and communicate and talk. They're going to get to like you. And getting people to like you is a critical factor for getting a job. So I hate to say that, but it's part of the real world is they want to be able to work with you. And so spending some effort when you're job hunting, not just polishing a resume, but actually getting out and talking to people and doing things in the industry will be a lot more fruitful for you. If you do get to that point where you submit a resume, I think that's when this type of thing applies. But networking is way more critical than resumes. So.
That's a good point. Would anybody else like to talk about maybe the application process of their particular company?
So I would make a comment to add to that comment. If you want to work for DC Engineering, you better have his card when you leave this room. and he better get a copy of that of your cover letter resume.
Right.
You know, that's how it works.
Right.
Can I add to that question, I guess, Don?
Yeah.
You spoke about meeting people at ASHRAE meetings, and I'm sure the rest of you have other professional organizations that you partake in, and I know Sarah, you're involved with Manufacturing Day and that sort of thing. So, how often do you meet people at those events that turn out to be people you go to? Like, you don't have a job open now, but you remember somebody from a Manufacturing Day and go back and look them up when you're looking to hire somebody. How often does that actually happen?
Well, it depends. There's a couple things that depends on, right? So anytime that anybody's out in public, right? You're at the grocery store, you're at manufacturing, it doesn't really matter, right? It's the interaction that you have with that person that really, it really solidifies it in your head, right? So, if we had a really great conversation, but you maybe didn't say your name, or, I think a firm handshake with your name and making sure that, they're looking at you. So if you come over and talk to me, and I shake your hand, but I'm looking over here because I'm trying to do 4 things at once, it's highly probable I did not catch your name, right? And if that's the case, then at the end you could reshake and say, it's really great to meet you, Sarah. Again, my name's Dan, whatever. And then, so it's gauging on your side also, that interaction and how that connected, and remembering that we meet a ton of people all the time. So, it's just part of it. I'd say there's a lot of times, I can tell you we've hired, so I used to teach here, I did senior design, and 3 of our engineers were my students. So I can tell you when I interviewed and they were my students, if we didn't interact well and I knew I had to work with them, I wouldn't interview them because you sat in my class for 9 months and that didn't really work out. So, so
it's a long interview.
Not go well for them. So
It's not just a meeting. Everyone's going to be paying attention.
Exactly. And then remembering as you go through life, especially if you want to stay in the valley, it's a really small valley, and so how you present yourself and how you treat people is really important to remember as you go through. Like people interact. I see Tony all the time. Tony and I interact all the time. We don't work together, but it's just really important to remember that and be respectful and present yourself well.
You guys are all taking a lot more math than you ever wanted to, so you understand probability. Your question is spot on, though. It's about networking. Mm-hmm. And it's not just with the people up here or the people that are high. The biggest probably networking opportunity you have is in this room, because somebody's going to go get a job somewhere that you didn't see when you're doing your search, and they're going to tell you, hey, this is a great job. And it might not be your first job, but it might be 4 years down the road where you're like, hey, you know what? We need a senior engineer, and there's this, we're looking at a particular material. I remember you did it. Are you interested in coming? I mean, that networking thing, whether it's with the faculty or the people in this room, it is important that you do that, because that's, I would say, I don't know it, I'm going to make up this number. I would say half the people that have jobs, probably somebody called them because they knew about them, or there was a job and that's the reason they applied for that job, because they heard about it. It's not the hard search that you do on whatever the ones are now, Indeed and all these other sites. Somebody will actually tell you about the job, because then you not only know somebody in there, they can tell you the honest truth about the job and what the company's like, but then you also can do that. So for me, when you ask, if I know you and I've got that, you can't legally hire somebody from the outside without opening up and doing that. I mean, smaller companies will do it, but you shouldn't do that. So what will happen is there'll be a job posted to say, hey, we've got a job, make sure you apply for the job, and then your resume goes to the top of the list, and then people have to, that's how it happens. So you don't typically would get hired because we have a spot. It's, hey, apply for this. I've got a co-op. I've got an intern. We've got an entry-level engineering. Apply for that. And then your resume, you're looking for the name. If you don't get it from HR, you ask. The other thing that you guys don't realize, stuff doesn't work like it's supposed to work. 99% of the time. There'll be a job posted in September. You might not see the resume from people that applied in September until the December timeframe, because of all the stuff it has to go through. They might be stuck on somebody's desk. So don't give up. If you know somebody there, don't just say, well, they didn't call me back, I didn't get it. You have no idea. The worst you can do is say, hey, I sent my resume in, did you get it? And attach a copy of it, and then they'll go, well, this is good. And then they'll go ask HR, hey, where's this resume at? Oh, I weeded it out because it didn't, It's like, no, give me all the resumes. So don't quit. Because it happens a lot too. You know somebody applied for the job and you don't have their resume, and you're like, don't give up.
All right. Well, I'd like to switch gears just a little bit. We have some time left. I would like to switch gears so now that we have a job. So think back to maybe what you were like whenever you first got your first job, and what were some of the rookie mistakes that you made at the beginning of your career that you see happening in other people that you could see how they might be different if they just took a different approach. Tony, you want to give a start on that one? Not because you made a bunch of rookie mistakes.
Oh, I sure did, yeah.
Oh, did you?
Where did you start?
Well, good.
He's from Missouri. Come on.
Yeah. Safety protocol is a big one.
That's why you're happy. That's why we're at home.
But try to get mentoring from anywhere you can. Even my first job was in field service, basically in construction, and I wish I would have started learning from the laborers, get to know them, and everybody out there can help you and make your job a lot easier. And they're not out to get you because you're the engineer. They're mostly nice people. They got their own stories and backgrounds that you can learn from. And so there's that. And also, if you ever make a mistake, man, don't hide it, not for 1 second. If you screw something up, you break a tool or a piece of equipment, grab somebody who hopefully you know, and maybe they'll help you keep it under wraps and fix it real quick. But escalate it appropriately. One of my jobs, I was a lead engineer, so everything was my fault, no matter if I did it or not. But one of my crew guys, he found a piece of a file outside of a gas turbine, and where's the rest of that file? You know? You're supposed to keep really good accounting tabs on what tools and parts go into the turbine enclosure and what comes out. And there was no record of a file, you know, going in or out. And we delayed the project by, you know, a couple of days. And on a 5-day project, that was a pretty critical extension. But you know, if you tried to hide it and there was a catastrophic failure because the other piece of that file was in there, then it would have been a multi-million-dollar disaster.
Right.
But instead, you know, it just set you back a day or so. That was a bummer. But we found most of it, and we got deep enough into it that wherever the rest of it was, we were assured that it wasn't someplace where it could wreck the turbine.
So you mentioned finding a mentor too right off the bat. Did that figure into that process at all?
Not a mentor, but I mean just getting that mentoring, like itch scratched wherever you could, whether it was from maybe a welder or an electrician, or could be the site manager or the client or somebody like that. I mean, even the FedEx guy can give you some pretty good tips on the politics and goings on of a job site or a company.
Yeah. Okay. That's Bart. You have something?
I would say kind of related to that. You know, certainly find a mentor, and that is key. I mean, I work for them today. I've been working for numerous years, of course, and I still look for mentors. Okay, from leadership to executives, whatever. I like the mentorship. The other thing I think that we as being a young engineer or whatever, sometimes you're gullible. Okay, don't believe everything you hear because there is gossip in work. Make up your own mind. I mean, make your own judgment. You're going to get some guy that's cantankerous, that's been in the company for a long time. He's going to try to taint you. I mean, seriously, you have to be strong enough to make your own judgments. And that's,
they're just testing you.
And they're trying to pull you to the dark side. And that's why it's important to have a mentor that can kind of help you weed through that. Because, and I'm going to speak as a leader here, as a manager, and I've had supervisors and leads underneath me. You have to be careful. Some people are not leaders; they're a gang leader. I mean, they're trying to get their team. Management sucks. I mean, don't get sucked into that. Okay, be your own person. Make that, but that is hard. As a 22, 23-year-old engineer, that is hard. But be aware of that. Okay, be your own person, and that again, find that mentor to help you that you do trust. I think that's good.
So next one, Dustin, you have some.
No, I have an experience that I'll share though. The first job that I got out of college, I moved to Wisconsin and worked in flow glass manufacturing. And so it's about a $150 million flow glass process line making glass for windows. And first day on the job, the engineering manager was giving me a tour. We walked into the control room, which is basically the whole brains of the entire facility. And he hits the emergency power off button and shut down the whole process and said, "Your job is to figure out how to fix that." And so I go, okay. But that stuck in my mind that, check your ego at the door is basically what he's saying, because you may know everything about glass, but you don't know how to pull that emergency power off button back up and let the factory reset and start back up. That was all it took, was to pull it back up. Clear the faults, whatever. But check your ego at the door and learn that they're there to help you, but you've got to take responsibility for understanding what your job role is. And my responsibility at that time was to fix those kind of problems. And so the point was clear that the expectation is going to be that we learn and do things and understand what you're doing, but also realize that there's other people there that can probably ask if we don't know what to do. So it's a good lesson to learn on day one.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard.
It's all uphill from that point, right?
You're like, are you serious? Am I fired right now? Yeah, it was pretty early for a day or two.
Shortest engineer career ever. Go ahead.
Have you ever been in the role of like a mentorship where there was someone below you that was doing something in the job that really bothered you or really kind of discredited your opinion of them in some way?
Yes.
And like how to avoid that.
Well, you ask for feedback and listen, because you're going to be walking in. Most of you probably haven't been in a professional environment, and you're walking in there, so you need to be open to feedback. Ask for feedback and be open to it, because you guys are going to all walk out of here full of piss and vinegar and thinking you can do anything, and it probably is true, but it takes a while to get there. And so we're really, to add to what they're saying, it kind of goes into this. A mentor, you go into day one and you're looking for a mentor, you probably won't find it, because typically you have to have some aptitude before they'll even take the time to do that with you. On day one, when you get in there, I think the biggest thing is getting feedback. So if you work for somebody that has a PhD, you might, if you have a 40-hour project and you have to turn it in on Friday, you might want to go in before Friday morning and say, is this close to what you want? And they're like, no, that's not what I want, because they want a lot of detail. If you work for somebody else, more of a mom and pop shop, you don't have time to do all that stuff. So you want to go in before you start writing your thesis and find out, is this the right amount? And they're going to say, no, that's way too much. And you're overthinking it and you're over-engineering it. So go get that feedback. If you come to me on Friday morning when the project is, when whatever your assignment was, a drawing or whatever that was due on Friday afternoon, and you haven't gotten any feedback until then, you're playing roulette at that point. So, get feedback. Hey, here's what I'm thinking about doing. Yep. And then Wednesday come back in, this close? Yep. And then that's how you actually develop those mentors. Because then you'll think, hey, I've got an ally here. He'll tell me, or she'll tell me what I need to do. Get that feedback, because you're not going to know. And the first thing you have to realize as an engineer is you don't know. Raise your hand and ask questions. That feedback loop is hugely critical for you. And then all those relationships will build from there.
Very good. Very good. Did you want to answer the rookie question? Any areas of where you made some rookie?
Man, I made lots of mistakes when I started. I still make mistakes because that's what we do. We're humans, right? So I think the big thing for me was making assumptions. So for me, it was making assumptions about the people that I work with. You don't really forget that the people around you are human, but everybody has personal lives and everybody has professional lives, and those things, they come together. And there was a guy that I initially worked with, and I thought he was a real jerk, man. I just hated that guy. I would go home and complain about this guy. And I went to Michigan. I worked at Daimler Chrysler. So just in general, culturally, it was much different than what I was used to. And I only had worked for 4 months, and when I started, I was like, thank God. And I only have to work with this guy for 4 months. And about 2 months in, he pulled me aside and just said, sir, I really want to thank you for always being really kind and super nice to me, because, I have a hard time communicating with people, and I really wanted to expand my job here, and I can't do that because I can't talk to people. And so I just really appreciate the fact that you've been, you say good morning to me every day, and even though I don't know how to say it back, you still say it to me. And so making the assumption of, personality types or how someone is, what someone's thinking, or you say something to somebody and they give you a look and you're like, ooh, ask the question of what does that, not necessarily what does that mean, but you need to be professional. You're at work. You're getting paid to do your job, right? But there's still a human element that comes along with that. So I still learn that every day.
Don't jump to conclusions.
Yeah, there's no mat. Don't jump to conclusions.
I use an opposite phrase over the top.
Oh, man.
All right, so we have a few minutes left. Are there any general questions from the audience that we could speak to? Sure. Yes, sir.
Going back to the resumes a bit, when you're looking through your resumes, how much do you look at GPA or honors or awards that people maybe earned in school?
You want to take that?
I think you look at it collectively. I think we've said that up here. It's you don't look at one individual thing. It's collective. Okay, if you're an honor student, you're a 4.0 student. Is that all you did? I mean, you have to have that. Did you work through school? Did you, do you lifeguard? Do you do other things? If you did, I hate to say everybody can do it, but if everybody's a dedicated student, has school paid for them, I think everybody can get a 4.0. I mean, that's just my attitude. Okay, so that doesn't differentiate you. Now, if you got that 4.0, you got the honors, and you worked, and you did this, and you did everything else, double thumbs up. But that's all you've got. It doesn't mean that much to me personally.
So you guys will get caught up in this, but so from a business standpoint, I'm running a small business is what I'm doing. That's the way I look at it. I'm an entrepreneur. This is in my garage. Every dollar that I spend on something, my kid's not going to get braces or whatever. And that's the way I think about my department when I look at it. So I look at things like, where did this person go to college? Where are they from originally? Are they going to want to live here? I worked in Wichita, Kansas, aircraft capital of the world. My manager, when I first started, I was a lead. I was interviewing people and said, do not even look at a resume from the East Coast because they'll never stay here longer than a year. So that's illegal, but that's what we got told. So my point is this: you're going to look at a grade point average. If you're a 3.8, you say, okay, 3.8, 3.2, 2.8, 2.4, 2.1. I mean, you're going to have an impression in your mind because you haven't met the person yet. So really, get the information on your resume. I think it's more important if you can do the relational things or you can actually make a connection with somebody to differentiate yourself. Because at the end of the day, your first job, there's going to be 25 resumes that look exactly like yours. So really, you think about that. It's if you get a phone call or a phone interview or a job interview, that's where you set yourself apart. Because the people that have asked questions here, I've noticed every single one of them. Which ones made eye contact with me? Which ones went like this? Which ones speak very softly, and which ones have confidence? Because you're going to have problems, and you're going to have to solve problems. You're going to be in a room full of people that all have really good ideas, and somebody's got to step up and fix it. So you're evaluating all those things. It's hard to get any of that from a resume. So your resume, I don't want to make you feel bad, but it's going to look like 25 other resumes that I'm looking at. So again, little things like, where are you from? Is he going to want to stay around here? What other extracurricular activity? Because the GPA, I promise you, there'll be 25 resumes between a 3.2 and a 3.8. There'll be 25 you take all the same classes, so it's difficult. And so that's why if you've got any other experience, any senior projects, if you were working, even a lifeguard, I still remember that resume. I mean, the guy, actually, in hindsight, I could tell that he was a lifeguard after I talked to him, but I brought him in for the interview because it's those kind of things. So do anything that you can that's going to be different from somebody else's resume, I think is critical.
And then remember what you put on your resume represents you. So like when you're talking about awards or any of that stuff, if you're going to list it, make sure that it's something that's listing a qualification that you're proud of. Is a good way to put it.
The one thing that's important on your resume, because you have all the template, all the things, other skills, other stuff. I had it at the bottom of my resume when I first came out, because I didn't. I grew up, I was working on a farm, and I worked at Southern stuff when I was in college. So I had nothing on my resume that differentiated myself. And so on the bottom I said, hard work ethic developed on the farm. And I talked about some of the farming projects I did, which isn't necessarily a direct application. I would say that over half the people that I interviewed with said, oh, so you worked on a farm. And then they asked me about it. So anything that can add value or differentiate your resume is critical.
Yeah, good stuff. All right, one more. We got time for one more.
So how much does the interview process change when you're looking at a master's or a PhD candidate as opposed to a bachelor's degree?
I'll take that. So I've got my master's, and I don't think that it's actually helped me get a job yet. So
Don't tell those guys.
So I think the thing to remember anytime that you're applying for jobs, you're looking for what's my next step, what do I want to do, you got to think about what do you want to accomplish. So, does that mean that I shouldn't have my master's degree? Absolutely not. But, I just haven't taken a job that's really said, I need that master's degree. So you don't really necessarily know. I didn't know what I was going to do when I was graduating from college. I mean, heck, I don't know if I know what I'm doing now, right? But, and everything will ebb and flow through life. But think about what you want. And if you might be applying for a job and you have a master's, but that master's degree doesn't apply to what job they're asking for, you're a step ahead because you've proven that you can do more, you can write a thesis, you can do more classwork. That says a lot about you, I think. But sometimes, you may think, well, I'm supposed to make $10,000 more because I got my master's. Well, if the master's doesn't really help you with that job in particular, you might not make more money because it's not required. It's like, I know how to be I'm a pilot, but I'm applying for, an engineering job. Do I going to make more from a pilot? Not really. But anyway, so just kind of keep in mind, sort of what you're applying for and what you're looking at. And yes, get your master's degree.
Nice. We'll talk about it.
I'm going to get beat.
Anybody else want to add to that?
I would just say that so for some of the positions that I hire for, which they say be an entry-level engineer doing refrigeration design, and I get an application of somebody that has a PhD, it's like, why are you doing that? Why do you want to apply for a position that you're way overqualified for? And if you can state that, hey, and the reason I look at that is because I want to hire somebody that's going to be there for a long time. And I know if you have a PhD and you're doing entry-level basic engineering work, you're probably well overqualified, and it's not going to be something you're going to want to do for a long time. So, what about that position is interesting to you? And if you're overqualified or you feel like you're overqualified, what are you going to get out of it, and what are you going to bring to the company that makes it worth you pursuing that position? So that's why I say when people are overqualified, it can hurt you, but you can overcome that by explaining, hey, that's just, I recognize I have a PhD, but I'd like to get into refrigeration and be at your company for a long time. That might help transition that and make it a little more easy. But I'd say, it depends on what role you're looking for. If you're looking at, a researcher or something like that, then that's a whole different level of position than an entry-level basic refrigeration designer, just based on your skill sets and what you want out of life. And you may just say, hey, I get my PhD and I just want to do design work and be there a long time. That'd be okay with me. But we just need to understand why you're applying for the role and paint the picture that you're not coming here to get 6 months of experience and then do something better. We want that position filled for a long time. We're not hoping to hire you for 6 months and then move to the next guy that wants an entry-level position as well. So that's good questions when you get to the interview phase, I think, is to say, hey, this is what I want and why I want to work for you, and I want to be here a long time. That's more valuable to me than any experience or degrees or whatever. You're going to fill the role, fill the position, and be a part of that team for a long time. And it's on me to paint the picture back and sell to you that there's opportunities for you to move up and advance and do other things besides maybe that entry-level role. But really, you're trying to fill that gap of, I need a role filled. I want somebody there a long time. What's in it for me, and what's in it for you too? It goes both ways. So.
I think you could do it with 3 examples. If I'm hiring a materials and process engineer, I'm probably, if you have a master's degree, you're going to move to the top of the list. If I'm hiring somebody for FEA, you're going to go to the top of the list. If I want an entry-level design engineer to set on a CAD scope, I would rather have somebody to spend 2 years working on a CAD scope than I would go. So it depends on what the role is and what you want to do. And if you want to stay in an area, or you want to work in a town, or that's where your girlfriend or wife is at, and you want to do that, you nail it. You just tell them, say, hey, I know this is an entry-level job. I want to do this, and humble yourself. Say, I have no expectations with the master's. I want to get in here and learn the business, and I want to grow and help, be an asset and add value to your company. You can explain that. But just because you have a master's degree doesn't mean you're going to. So for me, I'd rather have somebody that has a year and a half working at somebody's shop and working with Solid Edge. Now that I know she has Solid Edge, then I'm going to go see if I can steal some of her because that's for Solid Work. You said Solid Work. So again, it depends on what the role is. It doesn't just so. We'll talk.
All right. Well, I want to go ahead and wrap it up. So let's thank our panel. And sharing your experience and thoughts with our students and some of our faculty too. So they may be looking for jobs as well. All right. Well, that's it. And thank you for coming. We'll have another one next Friday. And I don't know, maybe will you guys?
We don't even have cookies yet.